Hi. Bonjour.
So let's go back a little bit on what happened at Kickstarter. Kickstarter was launched in 2009, right? And actually, you left Kickstarter last year, and that was after like 7 years of work on Kickstarter, something like that.
So we launched in 2009. That means we just celebrated our 5th birthday a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago. As we launched on April 28th of 2009. And the 7 years is basically, it took from when I joined as a co-founder of the company 2 years for us to get out the door. So I met my co-founders, Yancey and Perry, in January of 2007 or December of 2006, something like that.
So now that you're not working for Kickstarter anymore, let's get this question out of the way.
I don't know.
Is Kickstarter doomed?
No.
No?
No, I mean, we see plenty of founders leave companies over the years for various reasons. I think there's certainly no doom to there's two of us that actually left back in December, me and my co-founder Perry, for very sort of different reasons, and I think personal reasons. And I think part of the personal reason was a satisfaction that the team had grown strong enough and that we had sort of imparted enough of our own motivations for why we, at least as two of us, had started the company. And certainly for Perry, who was the genesis of the original idea for Kickstarter. And I think when it's a very emotional decision, a very personal decision, I think, at least it was for me, leaving something that you've birthed. I'll sort of equate it in this way. I have a daughter. She's also 5 years old. Anybody good at math here? The company's also 5 years old, right? So she was born about a month before we launched the company.
So that was the first Kickstarter project?
Yes, my daughter was the first Kickstarter project, actually, yeah. Pre-Kickstarter, barely. And I say this because I think it is maybe not quite as personal as my daughter, but I've had this very strange observational period over those 5 years in watching her develop and watching the company develop. And it's not to say that I'm, ready to let my daughter go roam the streets of Paris by herself. I'm still walking with her. My wife is with her right now. But with Kickstarter, there's 85 people at the company. So there's 85 babysitters that are helping project Kickstarter into the future. So I think that I'm very comfortable with, it was very comfortable with leaving when we did. And I think honestly, the most important thing to note is there's 3 of us, and 2 of us left, so there's 1. Okay. And Yancey's there to kind of carry the torch with the original intent of the platform and grow the company.
So your job title was head of design?
That's right.
What does it mean when you started Kickstarter, then over the years and at the time when you left the company?
Yeah, so I'm a designer by trade-ish. I studied mechanical engineering in university. I suppose as the joke with most internet startup entrepreneurs go, I'm a college dropout, so I left school. This was a millennia ago, probably about 20 years ago. And I had found design. I became very interested in design as well as programming or development or engineering, whatever you want to call it, and sort of the play between the two of them. So it's even funny to say that I was head of design in some way, because that was something that became an evolved necessity. So when you start a company, and for those entrepreneurs in the room, or developers or designers that are part of a fledgling company, a very small company, you can probably look at the work that you do every day and realize that you do more than what your job title is, right? And I think as human beings, we do more than what our job titles typically are. We should. And so, in the early days, we were all CEO, I suppose. We were all chief operating officer. We were all creative director. We were all designers. Maybe not all of us were engineers, because some of them take certain facility with that. But I guess what I mean to say is, at the very beginning, it's a very broad spectrum of what you do. And then as the company grows, you start hiring people to do things that perhaps they could do better than you. As it fell out, Yancey, other co-founder, focused more on community development and customer support. That is probably the closest approximation to what he had done in his past life. Perry became CEO and so managed all operations, but was also a very active CEO in all facets of the business. So worked very closely with Yancey and his team, and worked very closely with myself and my team, which was product development and design. So I at the early stages managed the engineers and managed the designers and the product managers. Then we hired somebody to kind of take over the engineering and the product management side, so that I could focus on design, which is probably more so where my depth is.
Okay. So between Perry, Yancey, and you, sorry.
Yep.
Who got the idea of Kickstarter at the very beginning?
Yeah, I said we launched in 2009. I joined in 2007. I'll kind of do a reverse chronological since we started there. Yancey had come on board a year before I had. So let's say beginning of 2006, end of 2005. I'm not quite sure. And going further back, Perry, who had the sort of genesis of the idea for Kickstarter, had this moment back in 2001. So it was a number of years until we came to realize what that initial inkling of an idea was. And I'll tell the story of, if you want. You guys interested?
Yeah, I won't.
Yeah. The story of where it came about. And it's really more about an incident happening that eventually allowed him or forced him to reflect. So the incident was back in 2001, 2002. Perry was living in New Orleans, down in the south of the United States, and wanted to throw a concert, a rave, to be honest. And yeah, okay, good. We know what a rave is. It was in conjunction or in the same period of time, the same week as another music festival going on in New Orleans called Jazz Fest. It's all about jazz. And on the side, Perry was also an electronic musician. As part of our connection as well around electronic music. And he wanted to bring something a little bit different, sort of extend the narrative of what Jazz Fest was. And sort of the roots of electronic music have a lot of connection to jazz music. And he started to put together the lineup and securing the artists, securing the space, security, all the laundry list of things that you do to put on an event. And as an artist, as what I sort of describe him as sort of somewhat of a Renaissance man, he's done a number of things in his life. He looked at the sum of the bill that it was going to cost to put this event on and got nervous. Got nervous that if he put this event on and had to forego all this money, that he wasn't sure if people were going to show up. It was a bit of an experiment. And his motivation wasn't really about money by any means. It was really one of art and culture. He just wanted to share this music with people, share his connection to this narrative between jazz and electronic music. And that was it. It was just pure and simple as that. He just wanted people to show up and enjoy the music. So the event never happened. To this day, the event has never happened. And this really bothered him, the fact that he couldn't pull it together. And he started thinking, surely there must be something on the internet that allows people to prepay for tickets for an event. It didn't exist. And what he started thinking about, and this I think is the closest thing to articulating what Kickstarter would become, was something that would collect a critical mass. So, let's say the event costs $10,000 to put on, just to break even, right? And he just needed to collect $10,000 from the audience, right, before the event happens. And once you get to $10,000, the event can happen, right? And he wouldn't lose a penny. Anything above that, maybe we can put on a better event. We can hire another DJ or put on better lights, or maybe he can walk away with a little bit of money, whatever it may be. And he had a long time to think about this. He wasn't somebody that was necessarily steeped in tech and so forth. But it was something that he felt driven to think about. And then eventually he moved back up to New York, where he was from, and was waiting tables. As I said, I sort of call Perry a Renaissance man. He's done everything from daycare, watching children, to I think he's even done road work, to running an art gallery, to making music and waiting tables at a restaurant.
So at first, Kickstarter was all about art, music, movies, books, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, so I would say that it always has been, it still is, and I guess what I would even say beyond that is we started out with those things that we knew about. So as three founders, we'd been very closely connected to the arts. As I mentioned, Perry ran an art gallery in Brooklyn. He's a musician. I'm a DJ. I'm also a designer. And Yancey's a writer and a rock critic. And so the three of us also within those things that we did, were also surrounded by artists, photographers and painters and poets and so forth.
So this is how you got your first projects online?
Yeah, I mean, the first projects
were
the first projects were our friends.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, we've been talking about this bloody thing for so many years. There were so many people that were, hey, when are you gonna launch that? What do you call it? Kickstarter, right? When are you gonna launch that thing? And so when we finally launched, there were certainly a few people that had ran a campaign that were friends of ours that had been waiting for a while. I think Perry and Yancey had even collaborated on a project as one of the first projects. Actually, interestingly, Perry launched a project of his own that failed. It didn't actually raise the funds. So that's always interesting. It's a good one.
It was a little bit too out there.
It was just a T-shirt. It wasn't really all that out there. I don't know. I don't know why. I think it's sort of funny that it's almost better story that it didn't succeed.
And did you launch any projects yourself?
I launched one. Yeah, it was actually something that we probably wouldn't even allow anymore. It was
drugs.
No, it was it was. I had a friend, this guy Nicholas Felton, who's a graphic designer out of New York. And he's become very well known for his data visualization, his infographics. And there's a certain sense of humor that he has about his work, and it's fairly dry anyway. So I wanted to collaborate with Nicholas, and it was essentially to hire Nicholas for some time.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about these rule changes that happened.
Sure.
So at first, as I said, it was all about art and movies and books and stuff like that. Then at some point, there were a couple of hardware projects, product-oriented projects. There was the Pebble that raised, I don't know how many millions, $10 million. And was it something that you predicted would happen?
So I think in our imagination, we sort of see the application of what we had done in many different things. What we knew about was where we began. And I think with product design in general, it was much like a number of other categories that exist on the site today. So gaming is another sort of parallel category. We didn't have any roots in gaming other than a bunch of nerds that played video games from time to time. We weren't game developers. We weren't really steeped in that community. But gamers found Kickstarter, and they started experimenting with this new platform and building a community around gaming. And now it's actually one of the largest categories on the site. And so I think the same thing existed and happened with product design. So I think the very first one, if memory serves correctly, was a project out of New York called The Glyph. It was two product designers had created a little stand. Sorry, I'm getting a prop that you could hold your iPhone. I think it was the 4 at the time. iPhone 4 in a couple of different directions, and attach it to a tripod to take advantage of the advanced camera that was on the iPhone 4.
And they raised more than $1 million, that's right?
No. So they raised maybe 125,000.
Okay.
And that why I say that is that was the very first thing that resembled a physical object that looked like a product, right? And that was sort of a curiosity to us. Oh, this is an interesting thing. And the way they narrated the project was brilliant. I mean, they did a beautiful job. And then about a year I want to say maybe a year later. Yeah, I think something like that. The next major milestone for us happened, or another major milestone for us happened, which was Scott Wilson's TikTok, which was maybe the precursor to Pebble. Yeah. TikTok was a wristband that held the iPod Nano, and it raised $984,000 US and some change, so just shy of $1 million. And prior to that, I think the highest funding project was, God, maybe $300,000. So it was like astronomically higher than anything else that was happening on the site.
So I've heard from multiple entrepreneurs that they got their project ideas rejected.
Sure.
Because they don't comply with the rules, and especially projects around hardware and stuff like that. So are you reluctant on accepting this kind of products, or is it just an exception, accepting from time to time a product?
So I'll start the answer to this, maybe not in the way that you want. So I no longer work there, right? And why I say that is because things change. It's been over 6 months now since I've been at the company, and what I think you're reflecting a bit on is the evolution of guidelines, right? Yeah. And I think when we were sort of chatting about some of this earlier today, I think one of the things that I tend to reflect quite a bit on, and particularly reflected on quite a bit in the throes of developing the company and growing the company, was that what we were really after, we built a platform that engaged a community. And I think one of the most important parts of the design of the platform are the guidelines. We're constantly sort of reacting to projects that come up on the site that maybe push us in different directions. Some of those things we find interesting, some of those things we see as potentially dangerous. For the nature of the brand that we're trying to build, and the brand is really a brand of community, so it's a reflection of the community. And so I think what we've seen a few times with rejections is maybe there's another project predecessor that looks similar, and the difficulty with that is I think in general is that we learn something from our past, and it's very important for us to be able to. And has always been important for us to articulate that in a refined guideline. No different than if you put a feature out and you see it doesn't quite work, or it doesn't do exactly as you intended. Sometimes that could be a positive thing, and sometimes that could be a negative thing. Inadvertently, there's always going to be a change that's going to happen. So if you think of the guidelines as sort of a functional mechanism, no different than a button, I think it makes a bit more sense.
Yeah. So this is kind of an app store model, right?
Is what?
It is kind of an app store model. Like you accept applications and you say, okay, this can go live and this can't.
It's a hard analogy. It's probably, I understand where you're coming from in terms of...
From TechCrunch.
Yeah, no. I understand where you're coming from in terms of the sort of guideline model. I hesitate a bit because with the App Store, it's in general a different beast. It's also solely product-oriented, and it is solely about the transaction. You've developed an application, you put it up in the App Store, I'm going to purchase it, and that's sort of the end of it. There's very little relationship, and I think one of the most important facets to the early narrative that we put into Kickstarter was ultimately the narrative that anybody that was running a campaign had. So maybe we back up a little bit and talk a bit about that early ambition that we had as entrepreneurs and why Kickstarter even exists. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier just in terms of where we came from as people in culture, right? People out in the world, people reflecting on society and the things that we didn't particularly like. And so there was Perry's initial genesis story of inability to make this event happen, but what we started realizing is that those around us had very similar walls that they were put up against. You could argue that the majority of it was around finance. They didn't have the funds, or they didn't have access to the funds, but really what that represented was, so I'll tell the story in this way, as an artist, a painter, wanting to get into a gallery and getting no's, right? No, I don't see your work as viable. And yet, what is it that person's right to say that that person's work isn't worthy of an audience. And we felt that that was wrong. I think the thing that we care most deeply about is, as a platform, the independence of that original idea by the creator. We take no share of the thing that gets created. It's solely the ownership of the individual that runs the campaign, and that was so epically important to us. And I think when we look at the development and the framing of the product itself, that permeates in every single way, not only in the guidelines, but even in the stripped down aesthetic of the site. So this is me getting a little bit perhaps into the design, and the design being a reflection of that early ideal. There was a little phrase that I had written, sort of stolen from a Mies van der Rohe quote, which was, the famous quote is "less is more." And so I'd sort of taken authorship of this statement and wrote a note to myself on my desk as a reminder of what we were after. And it was less of us, more of them, and them being the individual that was running the campaign, right? So the more that we could kind of strip away from the interface, it was very important to us. If I could strip away our logo and make it black and white as opposed to dark gray and green, that would be great. But we also thought a lot about branding and identity, and we wanted to make sure that we were also somewhat visible. But I think that was something that's always been very important to us, is that it's really not about us. And the best way that we, I think, express what the platform and what the product represents is through the stories of the projects like Scott Wilson or any of these other guys that are on the site.
Okay, and then something happened like 2 weeks ago, something like that. So maybe you've heard of it from the inside before others, but there was a big change in the guidelines, actually. You said that you're going to accept nearly every project now. Why?
So I'm no longer there. I can't really comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't know that it was coming?
No, I saw it coming, but I think the difficulty there is, and I think we've been talking about this for a long time, but look, conversations happen every single day, and it's been 8 months since I've been there, and I'm not in the day-to-day, so yeah.
So is it a way to become like Indiegogo?
What does that mean?
Indiegogo is where projects who are rejected on Kickstarter end up.
I would definitely say it's not to become Indiegogo. I don't think there's any sort of reflection on that. I'll tell another story that I feel comfortable talking about, and that was another story pre-launch. We saw this was maybe summer of 2008, and we'd seen a few other sites similar to Kickstarter popping up. And anytime there's some sort of competition when you're still vaporware, you get a little anxious, right? Who's running a company in the room, or who's part of a startup? And okay, there you go, right? So when you're in that sort of dark moment pre-launch, and nobody knows about you, but you know everything, and you're sort of in the closet, right? And you see maybe your Instagram, and you see something else launched that's some photo sharing something or other. You get anxious, you get curious. What are they doing, right? And I think we're always responsible in looking at what was happening around us, but there was, for I think the three of us, a very important notion that we were doing this for a very specific reason. We had a very specific thesis that we were after that was very personal to us, and I sort of noted to myself that I want to observe these things, but I don't want to get distracted or obsessed. And I think that's always held true. So we look at our competition, but I don't think we obsess about it. So certainly it wasn't in any strategic form to compete.
Okay.
I think it was more in terms of something we felt we could do, and it was around being maybe even in similar fashion to my reflection in terms of leaving the company and feeling very comfortable with where the organization was. I'd say it's probably a reflection of, Yancey's comfort and the team's comfort with where the community is.
So talking about where the company was, how was it working for Kickstarter? Let's say I want to work for Kickstarter. What's the culture like?
That's a hard one to ask a founder, I think.
You will say great, but
yeah, and I think it was something very special that we have. I think the best way that I can express it is, we never really pushed the throttle in terms of hiring or community growth. Everything that's happened within the platform has been very organic. Essentially, as I described, the gaming community or the product design community, these are communities that came to us and found Kickstarter as a platform very curious, were inspired by some of the other projects in other categories, and wanted to experiment with this model. And in this sort of organic nature, we took our pace with hiring, and we took a lot of care in who we hired. For me personally, I'd worked for, in the past, a company that was about 4,000 people, and it was during the late 90s boom of the internet. You see, the usual joke that I tell was, as long as you had a heartbeat, you get a job. And this always stressed me out as a kid, because I was looking around at some of the people that I was working with, and the quality of people was going down. And so when we had the opportunity to grow Kickstarter, I thought a lot about this, right? Especially even seeing with the boom on the internet as well, in sort of this next generation, again, this sort of massive growth happening all around us. We wanted to make certain that the people that we brought into our home, right, into Kickstarter, into our family, because we did, I think it's very important to note that the people that you work with, you probably spend more time with them than you do your loved one, right? I guarantee you, if I were to ask my wife, who have I spent more time with, Kickstarter, or my wife, or my family, I know what her answer would be. Kickstarter. Both my partners and my staff and so forth. And so I think, with that, we took a lot of care and took control of how quickly we felt we needed to grow, which was slow. Kickstarter's under 100 people right now. I think it's probably around 80, 85. I'm not totally sure on that. And for 5 years, that's pretty small. And we've been very resourceful in how we've worked, how we've grown. And so I think the best way that I could describe working at Kickstarter is it truly is an expression of the community that we came out of. Very close connections to the people at the company. I was noticing on email on my way over here that I think they're going on a retreat this weekend to the beach, and this is something that we started doing very early on, just as a way to get away and get to know one another. And we work a little bit, but hang out and go swimming and stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning playing. Now we can play Kickstarter video games or Cards Against Humanity or weird things like that. So. Yep.
So does everybody at the company backs a lot of projects on Kickstarter?
We have, yeah.
Do we have stuff lying around all over the office?
Yeah, so actually, if you were to go to the office, we just moved into a new office. We have like a display of projects, of things that we've backed, and a lot of times it's things that people in the company have backed and sort of contribute to the wall. It's sort of a museum, if you will, of Kickstarter's past. But yeah, tons of. I've backed 200 or 300 projects, I think. Yancey is a very prolific backer. He's backed well over 1,000 projects. We have one of our engineers, developers, who actually originally went to film school. And I think that's actually another interesting reflection of the type of person that exists within the walls of Kickstarter. There's a guy who went to school for film, whose passion was film, but also had another passion for engineering. He's an amazing engineer. Name is Teague. And he is literally backing a number of projects every single day. We have an iPhone app, and we get alerts every time somebody that we're connected to backs a project, and the sort of bell goes off
Yeah,
far too frequently.
I only
with
have
the-
like 5 friends on Kickstarter.
Okay,
They are
yeah.
all working for TechCrunch.
Is that right?
And I
Yeah.
get a notification every day.
Yeah, you should expand your network. Yeah. Probably find more interesting
So what
projects.
were some of your favorite projects that you backed?
It's always a hard question. You know, I think the thing for me has always been those early projects. Still to this day, those early projects, I think because those were people that taught us a lot about what we had made. Again, like when you're working in the dark, you have this thesis, like I described, that you're trying to prove, and you're just looking at a wall constantly. And as much as we would try to step outside the wall of our thesis and chat with our friends who essentially we were designing this for, and bounce ideas off of each other, it was always those early people that took a chance on us and taught us so much. There's a girl by the name of Allison Weiss, she actually went to school, and she was a student when she was running her first campaign, probably about 6 weeks or 6 months, 6 weeks actually, after we had launched, so early 2009. And so she was a graphic designer by education, but she was also a singer and songwriter, right? So she had a little Tumblr blog that she posted her songs and shared her music and so forth. And she had found Kickstarter, she was one of the early ones, and wanted to produce an album by herself. And this is something that she'd essentially already done, and she'd built up an audience. And it was interesting for us because this was our first viral success on Kickstarter. And I sort of say this a little jokingly, and now in reflection, I think she would too. But so Allison wanted to raise $2,000 on Kickstarter to fund her campaign, right? And so she launched her campaign, and we didn't really know much about her. She was actually probably one of the first few people on the site that we didn't know. And the craziest thing happened within 24 hours, maybe even 12 hours, she'd hit her goal, right? We'd seen projects that go, 15 days, 30 days, and just barely cross $500, $1,000, right? And so here's a girl who had a 30 or 45-day campaign running that in 24 hours she'd hit her goal. And then what she did next was even more amazing, was she then created this whole narrative around getting people to continue to support her campaign. And she ended up raising, I think, somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000, which, again, I said was viral, right? We'd not seen anything around above maybe $2,000 at that point. And we thought this was crazy. Like, who is this girl? $2,000 in 24 hours. This was pretty epic for us. And so we did some digging because we were, again, kind of curious, and found out that she had this following. And then the following grew because of this weird thing called Kickstarter that she had, that allowed her to bring people into the process of developing her project. But I think the thing that she taught us was how to engage with an audience. And I think what was so amazing as a musician, as an entertainer, essentially, that she was able to reflect that very well, but also reflect her own, sort of curious nature. And so there's, that project holds kind of a special place in my heart. There's another one that finally finished. It was a film. I'm a cyclist, so one of my hobbies is I might ride my bicycle a lot. And Tour de France is coming up, right? Just missing it by 2 days, and it's killing me. And so there was a film that this guy from Michigan had posted to the site very early on, and this guy by the name of Mike Ames, and it was a film about it's sort of a reflective film about an experience that he had cycling across the country of the United States, from Michigan to, I think, California, and something about it was very emotional, very personal, and obviously it was an early project, and so I backed it. And I think it was, again, kind of interesting for me, and this is, I think, something that still gets expressed even beyond me as a founder of the company, but in anybody that backs any project, is that you then have a connection to the person that are essentially putting themselves out there. And so now I've become very good friends with Mike. It took him 5 years to get his film done. He literally just posted it a few weeks ago. So I applaud applaud him for that. These things take a lot of time. These are sort of side projects and personal projects. And so I think there's this, for me, that's a beautiful one because I've been following him for 5 years in editing and finalizing this film.
Updates every other week.
Yeah, or for him it was maybe every couple
other
of months.
month.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was the craziest project that you ever saw?
I mean, we've seen projects that wanted to pay off the national debt of the United States. That was a joke. There was another one that we never actually allowed it to launch, but we have a feature that allows you to share projects pre-launch or did, and this one was to recreate the Death Star. Anybody a Star Wars, right? Okay. So that was obviously something that was never going to happen, but it was, kind of kooky. Well, I think what's
How much money did they need?
I don't remember, but it was, it was ridiculous. I think they'd calculated
$1 gazillion.
Yeah, they'd calculated it. They had this whole equation that they shared, and it was obviously just about entertainment. But I think that was another part of our interest in the platform, and one of the things that I think we share with the community is a little bit of a sense of humor. And so we appreciate those little, quirky projects that get posted that, may never come to reality.
And then at some point, you said, okay, I gotta do something else. I gotta move on.
Yeah.
What happened at that point?
Well, I just turned 40 in January, and I have a 5-year-old daughter. And I think if I look at those two things, and the fact that I think for me in growing the team and getting the team to where it was and seeing the stability of the company, there was two things that were sort of pulling at me, or pulling and pushing, or pulling me and allowing the other to let go. Was pulling me was a little bit of the ticking clock of my life, and saying, hey, Kickstarter was great, it's still great, it's still very much part of my heart and soul. I still back projects. I'm still in touch with my team. I still visit the office when I go back to New York. So I've actually left New York, and I guess I started asking myself the question: if this was 7 years, what else can I do, right? And pair that with the sort of comfort with where everything was at the company. I felt like it was the right time.
So what else are you going to do?
Je ne sais quoi. I sort of describe this weird time of my life as sort of stealing from the Australians. I'm on walkabout, right? 7 years of putting yourself through the development of a company. I always describe starting a company as a very dark place. Even if you have co-founders, it's very hard. Number of times each one of us probably wanted to leave, and we lean on the other one to pull you back in, or whatever the case may be. It's a very emotional process, and a very physically enduring process, and emotionally enduring process.
How was it to be 3 co-founders? Because it's quite unusual, actually.
You see, I don't know how unusual it is. I don't know what usual is.
2?
2, sure. It wasn't by design. I think, the way Perry and I started out, our relationship, we had a mutual friend. His college roommate, an ex-coworker of mine, who was an engineer, he had put us in touch. And I think that the thing that Perry was looking for was someone to collaborate with regard to structuring the product and defining the platform, or translating the concept and some of his early sketches into something that was a viable platform. And the way we had started our relationship is let's just see how this works out. I was actually running my own design studio at the time. It was a studio of one. And I looked at this relationship as helping a friend of a friend out, a potential client, and hey, cool. I loved what his story was. And it only took us a few weeks to figure out that we had a very good working rapport, and he'd offered this idea of, hey, why don't you come on full time? And it was a very easy answer for me. If I can take a minute to kind of reflect on my own personal connection to the platform, which I do think is important. So pre-Kickstarter, about a number of years prior, so I'd worked at a large design agency prior, and I'd always tended to work on very technical projects, something that I could sort of bite my teeth into. But what I was always missing from that sort of work, commercial work, was this connection back to the arts. What I sort of missed when I was in school doing design work for musician friends of mine who had record labels, and I would do their artwork for their records, their releases, or their websites. And this was back in 1993, 94, 95, in that sort of weird, murky area. And so what I had done is I had started a little like online zine. And it was a way, again, to sort of take the facilities that I had, the ability to program and design, and create a little platform or publication online. And the intent behind this publication was essentially a gallery, if you will. It was where I allowed my friends who were photographers and poets and writers, and what else do we have? Musicians and interactive artists, guys that were doing some weird, quirky artwork in Flash. You name it, right? And that went on for a better part of a year, and that taught me a lot. And I think it was that experience that allowed me to understand when I got on the phone with Perry for the first time what it was that he was after, because I'd gone through this experience of celebrating art for the sake of the artist, not for the sake of myself. And I think that was one of the things, going back to the 3 co-founder thing, I think that was one of the things that we shared, right? And I think it was very easy for the 3 of us to work together because we had that shared vision of Perry's. Like, we shared his vision for what he wanted the platform to become, and we came from a very similar place.
All right. And do you want to come back to some day-to-day art now? Because I guess you didn't have much time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say that I'm an artist, maybe more of a tinkerer. And there's a number of things that I'm tinkering with. And so I think maybe the reflection back to the publication that I'd done, it was called Subsistence. And so if I think back to those days, that was tinkering. That was me just mucking around. I did this out of interest in sort of pushing my own abilities, and I think it's just something that's just part of me. And so I think I'm back in a zone where I'm trying to find that moment to tinker, something that I want to tinker on, and I don't know what it's going to become. Yeah.
So what do you think are some great startups when it comes to design these days? Is it the Yo app?
I don't know if there's any particular app to think about, but I will.
Not necessarily in that.
Yeah, but I think what I would say is I think the best applications, the best products out there, the best brands out there are things that reflect human nature, right? That respect and have a connection to the way people behave, and maybe move people into either a world that they've not experienced, but not too far off from what they understand. And I think that was one of the things that I suppose we did quite well with Kickstarter. Was you could argue we introduced something very new, but I would actually, and we spent quite a bit of time thinking about this, it was actually something very old. It was about patronage, right? And I think, certainly in France there's a much closer connection to that than we have in the United States. But this close proximity between patron and the artist, and so I think there was something very familiar about it, maybe returning us to some relationship that we'd missed. Something that removed, say, the middleman, and I have a direct relationship with the other individual who's on the other side of the internet. And so I think the thing that we talk so much about, particularly if I think back to those moments when Perry and I were on Skype or in his apartment in Brooklyn, or mine, and it always came down to people. It never came down to typography. It never came down to color palette necessarily. We'd certainly have those debates, but it was always about, are people going to understand this? And what is it that people are looking after? Why are we doing whatever problem that we were trying to solve at the moment? How does this relate back to something in the natural world? Something that we can relate to as artists or as friends of artists.
So why is Kickstarter's dominant color green?
God, it's funny. We had gone through, when I first met Perry, so I talked to him on the phone, and I think later that afternoon I'd gone over to his apartment. It just so happened that he had just gotten some designs back from a small studio in New York, and I took one look at it and I was like, what is this? It doesn't feel right. And so I think I say this only because we had, even from those early days, so that was day zero for me, right? 2007 when I met Perry. So 2 years later when we launched. So you could argue that we thought so much about what this thing would be, what the identity of the brand would be, and we had it all architected out. And yet the reality is, the mark, right, is a free typeface called Baruda that I just picked up. It seemed friendly. I'd gone through probably 15, 20, 30, 40 iterations of what the site should look like as a way for us to, Perry and I and Yancey, to sort of debate what felt right. But my attitude at the time was like, hey, there's more important things to worry about. With regard to the product, we can always change the logo. So it's still the same. I actually don't like it all that much, but my team actually loves it. The green, actually, interestingly, we've gone through a couple of iterations of refining the green, right? Much like the guidelines, much like the product, everything's in revision or refinement. Every product that we build as entrepreneurs, as engineers, as designers, they're living, breathing things, right? Day zero is not what it's ultimately going to look like. And I guess at the moment, the reflection of green was to have a subtle indication that this was about a financial transaction. Get a color green that felt kind of fun, but not like a bank. And apologies to any banks in the room. We wanted to create an identity and a site that felt comfortable and felt like there was some confidence behind it. I think it was just as simple as that.
Maybe, do you miss this kind of debates, these endless debates about the shade of green that you want to choose?
I miss my team a lot. They're very close friends of mine. I miss my partners a lot. I do miss those debates. I would say at moments like this, I get these debates. I get to think about these things a bit, and I think it's also just part of my nature, I suppose, that sit down for a coffee and end up talking about the color of green. I don't know.
All right, I think that's all the time that we have. So thank you, Charles.
Salut.
Before going to the startup pitch, we can take 4 questions maybe from the room. Yeah. Who has some question? Just raise your hand.
Okay. I have a quick question. Today, does the funding for Kickstarter projects come from the platform, from the community around Kickstarter, or from the projects community?
Good question. So it's always, I guess the way I would answer that is so we don't really market projects in any way, shape, or form. We've always had this ideal that it's as somebody running or funding a campaign, it's up to you to get the word out. It's for you to spread the word. It's about you telling your mom and your dad and your sister and your brother and your uncle and your nephew that, hey, I'm doing this crazy thing. Would you like to put some money in the bucket so we can do this, whatever it may be? And then you tell your friends, and your friends tell their friends. And so that's honestly worked quite well. I think over the years, as the platform itself has got variety, and perhaps even as the projects have we see some projects come back a number of times. People have become curious about the platform, and so they now spend some time on the platform. So I think it's changing a little bit, but I think it's always been part of that same culture about when we say creative independence, and that's really what the platform was designed for. It is about you as somebody running a campaign to do the hard work and get the word out. So I think it's always got to start with the person who's running a campaign.
Another question? Oh wow.
Later. Yeah.
Hi. So you said you joined 2 years before you launched. You actually launched Kickstarter, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you had some way of getting feedback on your product, well, that's what everyone tells us to do, at least, to get rapid feedback and to iterate quickly. How did you do that, get your feedback, and how did you cope with the fact that it wasn't your real product yet, it wasn't finished, it was a mock, etc.?
So I think I'll start with this one thing is that even when you launch, it's not finished. It's never finished. It's sort of the insanity of running a company and starting a company. Even when I left, it's not done. It's not where I wish it would be, right? So the question in those early days, those dark days when nobody knows about you, it's a few things that we did. So my wife became a sounding board for me. She actually has had significant influence in the product, interestingly enough. I know, from Perry, we get on Skype and, hey, my girlfriend said this, or had this feedback. And so these are little touch points that give us some view into the outside world. And then I'd done something that worked fairly well. So I'm a designer. I've got a number of friends who are also designers. And as a way to kind of reach outside of just the echo chamber of Perry, Yancey, and our engineers, I started a little Google group where we would share designs, and it was a way for me to get feedback on some of the stuff that I was working on, and presumably for them to get feedback on whatever they were working on, although I was the only one really sharing anything. So I think you're just using the resources around you. I think it is important to, absolutely important to get feedback. I mean, much like the stories that I was telling about Mike, the filmmaker, my relationship with him early on was actually getting on Skype and talking to him about, once we had gone live, and again, this is sort of a little bit of a different answer, but once we had gone live, how were people using it? Were people finding the things that we had intended appropriately? You've always got to ask those questions. We did. We were in beta, sort of a closed beta for a little while, but I would say when we launched, we didn't tell anybody other than our friends. So we took a very slow pace in growing. We also made it very hard for people to even get on Kickstarter. In the very first year, to get on Kickstarter, you had to email us, but the only way you knew how to email us was to find this weird link that was buried in a paragraph within the FAQ, right? So it was it was an intentional barrier so that we could, again, kind of control growth and observe and see what was going on.
I live in London, where equity crowdfunding is something that's really big. And traditionally has been seen as something complementary to what you're doing, especially for hardware startups. But now we start to see creative projects getting into equity crowdfunding as well, like comedy shows, movies. So I'm curious to know your perspective on that. Is it a threat to what you're doing?
I think it's a very different thing. I think the only, I don't know that there's a real hard line connecting the two. I'll say this, at least just from the past with the company, we've been approached around, are we going to do equity crowdfunding on Kickstarter? And in the past, the answer has always been, what we're focused on is what we're focused on, and that is around rewards and more about, this sort of philanthropic kind of patronage model. And I think it's important for us to stay focused is the thing that's gotten us to where we are, and somebody else we're more than happy to let somebody else challenge the equity crowdfunding thing. Yeah. Bravo.
So guys, you both stay on stage. I'm going to stay also with you. Now we're going to introduce you 4 startups, and they will have 5 minutes to product demo, okay? We don't talk about business model here, really. It's really focused on the product. Yeah. So the first one we've chosen is Duelo, and it's really a Kickstarter, I guess, kind of product. So I let Bruno and Jules come on stage and show their innovation.
Hi everybody, We are very pleased to be here. I'm Bruno Verbruge from Dualo, and this is my associate, Jules Autric. We are going to present our new musical instrument. I hope you will enjoy the show.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, cool. My name is Jules, and this is a Dualo, a new musical instrument. It's a new musical instrument. It's digital, mobile, and connected. It's for professional, amateurs, and beginners. And it's in the same time a controller, a sequencer, and a synthesizer. First, it's a new layout of keys. On this keyboard, a chord is represented by a shape. For example, this is the shape of the major chord. Okay, and this is the shape of the minor chord. A chord, a shape. It's very simple. It's an intuitive keyboard, and it's enough. You know how made chord on this keyboard. If you want, you can display the music. You can display the scale. This is a scale of C, and play music on this keyboard is like walk on this way of light. It is nice. Yes. It's a little composition. Now I can show you how we play this instrument. I play from scratch. Nothing is pre-recorded. First, let's choose a sound. To choose a sound, just you touch this button. It's very simple. Each key is an instrument, and you have the name on the screen. Okay? We have 116 keys, 116 sound. This is the key of the drum, kick, snare, hi-hat. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Okay? You play, you loop. Now let's add the piano. This is the key of the piano. Now let's add the bass and let's group the family. This is a volume slider. Now, look, we can play with the music. We have record loop, and now we will play with loop. If you touch this button, this is a music button. It's our pictogram, our logo. Its signification is music. You touch this button, and each key is in green. Do you see green? Four tracks. A key is a tracks. Okay. The order you have record. So this is a drum, this is a piano, this is a bass, and this is a guitar. If I make that, I stop the guitar and the piano, and in green it's played, in orange it's stopped. And now let's sing. All ends with beginnings. it's not finished. This is the first part of the project. The mobile musical instrument, Dualo. Okay? It's a mobile and it's connected. It's connected because the idea is all music is played on the instrument, it's shareable. For example, imagine you want to learn the piano because you like the song and you want to learn the piano. Two possibilities. You go at school and you learn during 2 years for learn the solfège, je sais pas comment on dit en anglais, the music theory. Voilà. Second solution, just you double click on the key of the piano and the score is played on the keyboard. If you want to learn, just you jump the tempo, for example, and you make your finger on the light. It's very simple. Voilà. If you have a question, we are here to answer. Thank you for listening.
So is this questions or what is this? Okay. So I'll say two things. So as a guy who tinkers with electronic music, and you guys are probably familiar with Ableton, right? And similar devices that you connect to your computer. But the usual sort of scenario as a musician nowadays is this. So as an audience member, it sucks, right? As a guy who back in the early 90s was going to raves and clubs and seeing DJs bounce around and actually connect and touch with something and then look for another record. Why I say all this is I think there's something interesting about the device is that it brings entertainment and enthusiasm back to producing music in a live format. It also looks, when you came up on stage, what is the accordion?
Accordion.
Yeah, I mean there's something, I was expecting it to sound like an accordion, so there's something familiar about even its form factor. I mean, almost identically, minus the, so whatever. So that's exciting. And I think, even like your little surprise, I think goes back to that entertainment sort of physicality, how you bring, think about a theremin, right? Anybody familiar with a theremin in the audience, right? Oh, only a few people. Yeah, there we go. So it brought sort of physicality and space and physics into music production, right? You're basically playing with light and sort of moving the hand around and look kind of weird and trippy. You looked kind of weird and trippy when you were, leaning back. So I think that was also interesting. So I think it's fun. There's also there's a lot going on with programmable surfaces within music. So my first reaction was the interface is a bit opaque, meaning I don't know what to touch or where to begin. But that may not be part of this part of the product itself. That might be part of like when I get the thing and put the get a tutorial in terms of how does it work? What's the onboarding process? How do you get somebody started with the product? That may be something to think about. And I wasn't part of your presentation, so maybe you're thinking about it. I think that would be my only thing. Was how are you thinking about somebody first getting the package in the mail once they've purchased it from you?
So the first thing is maybe the quickest answer will be it's a video game. Okay. If you only, at the very beginning, you can start like the tutorial, which is already inside, and you know that you are going to follow the lights, and the lights will wait for you. And at the very first beginning, you're going to hit the lights, and then the next one will appear, and so on. Once you get it where your finger should be on the keyboard, then you start adding the rhythm, and that's it.
You become familiar with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is maybe what we think, because you are not going to buy this instrument without knowing a little bit what's behind.
Yeah.
But for the answer, what comes with the package when you open it? You have the instrument, you can use it as an instrument, make sounds, you plug your headphones, and that's it. And then the next stage is you're going to plug it on your computer just to have the last update. and you're gonna have like an iTunes, you know, software where you will be able to load and save your own composition, and the same for the sound bank. So this is where the tutorials, the lessons will be, and you're gonna be able to get them from the community for free, or maybe in a later time buying, if you want to like know how to play reggae, but all the kind of style of the reggae, there will be someone in the world that will build the lesson to make you understand what reggae is about, and to make you learn each of the instrument that make the reggae, the bass, the drum, and so on.
So is there, I'm curious as well, like as a device, it almost looks like something that I could connect, say, use with as a controller, perhaps with Ableton. Like, is that something you guys are also thinking about? Like, how does this play with other devices that are out there as sort of an extension for what people are doing today? I mean, as I said in the beginning, the thing that, and as we ended the discussion, I think what's interesting is that there's something physically familiar, right? The accordion, as much as I know that's not what you're after. There's something physically familiar with it, as well as just the sort of the nudeness of the keyboard is also fairly familiar with as far as DJs and electronic musicians go. But I also wonder about the modernity of it, like just when you say connected, like how, you know, is there something that can I hack the device and use it in new ways? Is there sort of an API that allows me to interface with the software? And then what about sounds and so forth? Am I limited to the sounds that are on the sound bank, or is there sort of a larger?
At the very beginning, what you're going to be able to hack is the sound bank inside, and the songs. I mean, the composition that you will be bring back and forth, even if you create it, but if you get it from somebody else that created before, we are thinking about opening an API to hack the instrument, but as it's also a MIDI controller, like the old school MIDI.
Awesome.
You also have a USB MIDI in and out that is recognized on iOS, Linux, and the rest, and it will also be in a few months wireless. So you will already have everything going out. So if you want to hack, you can do it. Even the keys, if you don't like our layout, which is very clever, we didn't talk about that much.
Yeah.
But you will be able to have like the number 0 to the number 115, and then you do whatever
so you can
want.
do an overlay, some sort of cover. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean the thing is that our main innovation is what we call the dualo principle. And that we explain not so much, is that you take a scale, you separate it, and you have half the notes on one side and half the notes on the other side. That's because you're a musician, you know it's thirds. So a sequence of thirds make chords. That's why a chord is only keys that are just right next to each other.
Cool. Going back to the question of putting this in someone's hands, you were very able with the device. Like, what sort of testing have you done, like putting it in the hands of a musician that's never seen this before, and how do they interact with it?
Every musician is different, so the answer will be different for each musician. I mean, we can bring 11 years old teenager, and he will play better than me.
Yeah.
And you can take a pianist that have 30 years old of playing.
Yeah.
And he will still trying to have the low keys on this side, the high keys on the other side. It really depends. But I mean, because of the dualo principle, our main innovation, the new layout of the keys, it's very easy and very intuitive. So most of the time, I would say like 95% of the time, musician only takes a few minutes to understand, and at the end they're just like, oh my god.
It becomes natural. That's good. That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, I think he said everything, but I'm just going to add a couple of questions. How much does it cost
What do you think?
That's
I don't know. I would pay like $200.
$200. You're a musician?
Yeah,
What do you play?
pianist and DJ.
Okay, so how much is your piano?
A lot more.
Okay, can you give us the price?
Yeah, probably €1,000.
Okay, so it's like a low, or it's a piano from the very beginning of the prices. And what about your gears? You're a DJ, so you have many gears.
Yeah, it's expensive too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Okay.
do you think
Cool.
a controller, a synthesizer?
Will you give me a promo or?
We have the pre-order if you want. But you have to be quick if you want to have it for sure in September.
Yeah, my main concern was pretty much what he said. I think it's going to be quite hard for some people to learn how to play it, because it's good that there is a screen at the top, even though we can't really see it right now. But I guess that's the main interaction point to understand how it actually works and stuff like that. But there are many keys which are close together. I guess it's going to be a bit hard for some people to learn.
Maybe I can try to answer that question. On the dual keyboard, the fact that you have the major thirds going on the inside and the minors are going in the outside, you can show.
Do you know what that? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C.
Okay.
C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If you make that, you separate the scale, and you have a chord on the right hand and a chord on the left hand. You can see the succession of third. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in this direction. This is a major third and minor. This is C, so this is major third, minor third. If you make a major third add with a major third, make a fifth. All music is represented by a geometric shape. It's
Nice.
you see the music on the keyboard.
Okay.
I mean, our logo is the DNA of the music, because you have two things that you cross them, and you'll be able, you only have to learn 7 shape, and you'll be able to play all the scale in every tonality.
Thank you.
So Fiddle, hi, my name is Claire Emily. I'd like to present you Fiddle. Fiddle is the first smart shopping platform. So we've created something that can actually help people really connect to clothes online. So for now, when people want to buy online, they have so much issues. First, they have some sites where there's only brand sites, so they have to go through different websites to find their clothes. Then you have the multi-brand website where you have filters everywhere, and it's very difficult to find the clothes that you like. And the biggest issue is that you have so many offers, but you don't actually, the main issue is you can't try them online. So we have created a platform where you can try on clothes online with only few pictures, and just take pictures from you, like on the front, on the sides, and on the back, and then the platform creates you in 3D. We already have all the clothes online as well from all the brands.
It's we've seen some experiments with. Is this thing on? On? Yeah. Hello. Okay, that's perfect. Good. Yeah, there's quite a bit of fashion actually on Kickstarter. It's not one of our biggest categories, but it's definitely something that bubbles up every once in a while.
If I do it again, we are not selling clothes. We are a marketplace where brands can connect and have all their clothes online, and then for the user, he only has to take a few pictures of himself to try on clothes. It's very easy. It's very very simple for him to use, and he can actually. So first, he has to create his 3D avatar, but then all the clothes are there, and all the clothes are sorted through the thousands of websites so that he can find directly all the clothes that fits him and that he actually likes. Because the platform is smart and it learns from your past purchases to be able to provide you with all the clothes that you like instantly. And then you can keep all your clothes in a connected wardrobe as well. So if you want to buy a new pant with a shirt that you bought already 3 months ago, you just have everything there. Or if you find something on shop as well, you just scan the barcode and then you can put it on the connected wardrobe as well. So I'm actually really excited to present it today because we're launching a Kickstarter campaign this summer. And you'll know a little bit more about that. But I don't know if you have a question for now. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm curious, is this working? Why the model to sort of aggregate brands and aggregate consumers into your site versus creating a product that any of the brands could take advantage of?
So the idea to have our own website is that we want to create the easiest platform for a user. So a user just have to connect to one website to find all the clothes. And then we can also add what I told you, the machine learning module, so that we learn from past purchases and searches to be able to provide exactly what you want.
So I think that I know a company that's I think they've launched actually. It's not quite doing this, but they have the same sort of intent, which is about enabling you to try your clothes on without having to leave your bedroom, right? Yeah. Sort of bridging, I always sort of describe it as bridging that digital divide, right? It minimizes returns as well. But what they're doing is different. They're not creating a platform. What they've done is just created a simple product that plugs into, say, Zara.com or right now they're being used on Gilt. I don't know if you guys know Gilt, Gilt Group. And so it's sort of it's the opposite model, right? It's about associating with the brand and being sort of a powered by or just completely nobody knows about them. And so I think why I ask is because I think it's I think this is something that we're constantly kind of trying to challenge. It's where you get we're all familiar with it. You hover your mouse over an item, and it sort of gives you the magnifying glass view in. So this is sort of a step forward in innovation beyond that. But I'd imagine the difficulty, and maybe you can prove me wrong with your relationships with some of the brands, is most of the brands want to own that relationship with the customer.
So yeah, I agree with you for this part. The thing is, what we see in other fields as well, for instance, hotels and restaurants, is that people are more and more looking to be able to compare things and have feedback on the products and have everything at the same place as well. So that's just a trend, and we're trying to bring that to customers through the platform.
I have a question about the technology behind it. It seems a bit too good to be true, actually. What do you need to provide when it comes to, let's say you're a brand, you are selling some clothes. Yeah. What do you provide so that it works with the 3 magic pictures that turn it into a 3D model? So
for the brands, they just have to give us the measurements of the clothes that they have to produce them. So it's just automatic.
And pictures, I guess.
And pictures, yeah.
Okay.
But it's already what they have. Just we plug our system to their data, and then we have everything, and it creates automatically on our website.
Okay.
And for people, I told you, it's just picture on your height.
Yeah, I think it would work perfectly well on a tablet or smartphone because you can just move around the body or stuff like that.
Yeah. I've seen sort of a demo from the other product, so I know it's possible. I would imagine it's probably like just similar experience is probably awkward in the beginning, and you refine it over time. I still just wonder about this desire to create a platform versus a product, and again, just thinking about the mindset of a brand is to kind of own that brand. It's why you have Zara as an example, and I'll just pick on it because I know it, is they have a store, right? or Apple as another brand, they actually have a store. They're trying to control their brand. You very rarely see Apple sold in other stores. Maybe they have very controlled relationships with certain retailers. So that might just be a challenge that you guys have to overcome.
Sure. So first, we most certainly try to work with brands to overcome that. There are already some multi-brand websites, so they're already existing. We're offering something that is just a step forward, and we already have 250 brands that have signed with us, so I think we are going on the right way.
Nice. And have you tried it with some people who wanted to see how it looks like? And what did they say? What's the feedback from beta users, or I don't know?
So we are actually launching the beta version in September. So it's but we've tried on with our just the members to see how it looks when you're through the avatar. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, cool.
I'm the founder of La Paillasse, which is originated by Hackerspace. One thing is, biotech, it's really full of promises. It's basically promising new kind of renewable energies. It's promising also new ways actually to understand yourself, and your environment in a much better way, more ecological, and much more affordable. And this is coming also with the revolution in hardware. But all these technologies, that all those promises, how are they going actually to really appear and be done? So usually everything happens in labs. But hardware and biotech labs, especially biotech labs, they are somehow really hard to reach. They're really hard to build. They're really hard to access. They're part of this ivory tower that we call academic labs. So this mere microphone is hard. Wow. It's like a wah-wah pedal, And so the thing is, 4 years ago, I started a PhD in synthetic biology, and I asked myself, even though I was in my own lab, I was doing my own subject, my own studies. I was not entirely free to do whatever I would like. And if I could, I could even actually, start something new, because you're somehow not free of your own environment. Labs today, especially academic labs, they have always almost the same kind of people inside. The same people that have the same background, and this kind of homogeneity that doesn't actually enable, breakthrough, and especially to think outside the box when you need a new kind of use. So here, basically, we had to rethink completely what is a lab today. So that's why we started La Paillasse. We started to say, okay, we don't have any money, and we don't want definitely to build a new lab inside institutional walls. So let's do it in a squad. And so we built the first, entirely modern and equipped biotech lab in a squad. And we call it La Paillasse, which means the bench. And it was a complete experiment. We didn't know exactly what it would, produce. And what happened was, amazed us. We had actually a lot of people that came in because it was entirely open and entirely free. We got for more than 300,000 euros worth of equipment for free, because we just would look for in the garbage of laboratories. And at the end, we'll be like lab, more equipped than my own PhD lab. And it was for free. It really amazed me. I was really surprised at how easy it was. And the people that came to us were not scientists originally. They were designers, engineers, people that actually never touched biology, but really envy actually biologists. And they envied them because biology was this kind of object really far that you couldn't touch, because it was really, basically, I don't know how to say that, but you cannot touch it because they were imprisoned, in academic labs and elitist labs. So then, with this community of people that very diverse, that we look around us and we can do anything, because basically we have all the possible skills around us. Electrical, mechanical, informatics, design, to arts, communications, even sociologists, philosophers, mathematicians. And so we started actually to think how to democratize biotech, because if we want actually to, again, enable all those premises, you need to democratize first the technology to invent new kind of uses. So we started by creating new kind of equipment, open source, low cost equipment, so laboratory hardware. And then we were starting to build also around biomaterials. And so I'm going to give you just a simple example very fast. One of the things we invented in La Payas, it's a work made between designers and biologists. It's actually how to use the mold that you have, for example, in your dishes when you don't wash them. Actually, you can use those molds to basically save the planet and make something useful for yourself. And we made actually a biological ink that is entirely biodegradable, that you can grow yourself. And it's a blue ink that can also change color. It can, it can be blue, red, yellow, green. You can paint with it. So it's a new kind of object. It's a new kind of material that basically using biology, the power of biology, to transform matter. So that's the kind of thing you can imagine when you're outside, academic lab where where biology can only be accessed. So I'll finish here. Oh yeah, and 2 days yet, and 2 days we'll be finishing our first crowdfunding campaign that we run on KissKissBankBank.
Not on Kickstarter, I think.
Yeah, not yet. So thank you very much.
So I know you quite well because we met last week, something like that. That wasn't really a good pitch because we talked for an hour and I was very excited at the end of our meeting because you're doing some amazing stuff. I guess maybe you should talk about some examples of projects, like concrete examples coming out of La Payas.
I was going to say the same. It was you were talking a lot about what the background was, but it was a pitch, and I was looking out at the audience, and I think you were starting to lose people, but I could sense your excitement, and I'm very interested in what it is that you're working on. But I would agree with Roman that I think the results of what you created is probably far more interesting and compelling, right? It sort of grounds a bit of that.
So this is a much better microphone.
It is a much better microphone.
Yeah.
Okay. Wireless.
So one of the examples I gave just before is one of the very exciting thematics that we are exploring in La Payas, the use of biomaterials. Something that can grow yourself from basically very basic components like sugar. And so when you look at something growing, when you look at the potential of biomatter and the fact that it can produce basically any kind of molecules, then you can start to think, because those cells are basically microfabrics, microfactories. And so if you start to master those microfactories, then you can imagine many things, almost any things at all. And the ink was first one of the very first applications that seems normal, because we didn't have to use GMOs. If you want to enable people to play with life, to play with biology, to use biology as a tool, nowadays GMOs are basically forbidden. So we had to find a natural bacteria for that, and that was actually very hard work, because the repositories of cells nowadays are only accessible to scientists. So if a designer that wants to invent, for example, a new kind of use, he will have like a really, really hard time without having any assistance from scientists to do anything with that. So that was one of our missions, to bring actually designers that think about use and couple them with biologists.
Is an example or an analogy, maybe a comparative thing of what you're after here is, if I think about a maker lab, right? Like we have this like current fascination with 3D printing, whatever. But it is about accessibility of manufacturing on your desktop, let's put it that way. Is that essentially what you're starting to describe? Is that you're providing tools for, the amateur biologist to hack?
yeah, the idea is to bring down the cost of access to the technology so that they can start to think of something completely different that we would have thought as scientists or engineers, professional engineers. And exactly what happened, in the 70s with informatics. So, and one of the things, other than biomaterials is genetics, DNA, basically. So we don't spend a day without hearing the word DNA. And it's becoming more and more present, and most of the people don't understand what it means and what it can bring to them,
So what can you do with DNA?
DNA is basically the information of life.
Yeah.
It's what defines your most, inner self. So there are many technologies today that are accessible for you to understand your inner self. It's called sequencing, DNA sequencing. And it's not only about yourself, it's also about your environment, anything that is living. So it could be, your plants, your pets, it could be also insects, it could be also, bacteria, it could be, it's, even your food. And so at La Payas, we decided we have to bring actually a tool that is, basically accessible to anybody for that citizen can now start to understand their own environment, biological environment. So we did what we called, we bring down the cost 100 times of a genetic test, from basically 300 to €3. And it's called quick and dirty DNA barcoding. And it enables you, for example, to know if you have GMOs in your plate or if your lasagna have horse or beef meats.
Nice.
Hi everybody, I'm Raphael, and this is my partner and wife Charlotte. We are working on a project called Barman, spelled with 4s, like this. Here you go. And basically, Charlotte and I, we really love cocktails. And I think many of you tonight can relate to that. And what we came to conclusion is what Charlotte was always the one who was making cocktail, and me, I am lazy. I don't really have the skills she does. So she was only the one that was making the cocktails. So we thought anybody should be able to make the cocktails and share a great time. And so that's what we're trying to do with Barman. The goal is to make, share, and enjoy with the people you love the cocktails. So we started on building on this idea and making it real. So that's where we got to so far. So we can show the video. So it's connected in Bluetooth. You can choose the drink and how many people you want. It tells you the ingredients, and the light gives you feedback, and the sound also. So it cannot be easier to make cocktails with this thing. So the same, you pour all the ingredients, and then the ice, and you just have to shake and serve. So it's the easiest thing to do. And we think we've created the very first drunk-proof shaker. Even drunk people can make great cocktails. So right now we are testing it with real users and are still improving on the prototype. We've done many prototypes over the 9 past months. So it's really been a hard work, but really great work. I've learned a lot of stuff. And so we're planning a Kickstarter on next September, and hopefully we'll make it.
That's great.
So it's a connected shaker.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, exactly that. See,
Yeah,
it's
I
really
love
simple.
this. Yeah, maybe how do you know how much liquid you put in the shaker?
It's really simple. There's a weight sensor, and all the data is in the app, and there's a dialogue in Bluetooth Low Energy.
Yeah.
So as you pour, you know exactly. There's no unit to manage, no numbers. It's really super simple.
How much does it cost?
The
I'm
tough
sorry,
question. Tough question. It will be between 100 and 200.
Okay, that's nice. So there is this startup at TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco of last year. They built something called Monsieur, which was like the size the size of a MakerBot, and you just put the drink that you want, and it would automatically make you a drink. What do you think of that?
I think it's completely another approach. We value the fact that you have to prepare the thing and to share it. You have to put a little bit of yourself. It's not just a vending machine. You don't push a button. You learn also when you make it, and it has more value when you share with others.
I don't know if it was Monsieur or not, but there was a Kickstarter project for, maybe it was the same thing, maybe something similar, which was kind of what you described, the vending machine, almost like a slushy machine. I don't know, you guys have slushies out here, for alcohol, but you're limited to, I think, 4 to 6 different alcohols, where this, I think what's also just going back to the first pitch a bit, which was interesting about this, is it's familiar, right? The only thing you've added essentially is an iPhone app, right? I guess my question would be, so I go on the internet, Google, whatever, I find a recipe that I like. How do I send that recipe to your app?
So hopefully there will be almost every recipe before, but there's one feature that we think is really interesting, that you can create recipes with this. So you put the ingredients, you fill it, and you can share it, and the others will be able to replicate the same exact recipe anywhere in the world.
That's definitely cool, the sort of community around, what do you call this, community around drinking, but hopefully not alcoholism, but
It's a connected device, but with a fun touch. We are not on the quantified self, or it's just for fun.
Now, what I really like is the sound effects, and you made it actually delightful to make a cocktail, and the delight effect, something very important. It's like pulling to refresh in Facebook Messenger or stuff like that. These little sounds, they matter a lot.
We still need to work more on this one to make it really agreeable, but we think both visual and sound feedback is great.
I don't give advice on Kickstarter campaigns. It's up to you. I think I'll answer this in this way, in that I shy away from advice because I think there's no answer for a Kickstarter campaign. I think you guys should reflect what the product is, or what the campaign is. It's really a reflection of you, and so have fun with the Kickstarter campaign. Have fun with how you express what this is for. Have fun in the video. I mean, this is certainly a thing that you could have fun with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the video is really plain for now, but we really want to give the fun touch also in the.
Tell a story around it first. Reach out to me when you launch.
We'll sure do. Count on us.
What else? I mean, it's basically like reaching out to your friends and seeing if it can go viral or not.
So one of the major aspects of our work today is we'll try to build a community around this to help us really boost the launch of the campaign, and that's really tough. Really tough because we don't know really how to. It's not our job first, so we are kind of trying everything.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much.